Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Today on CityCast Denver, between the vandalism at nearby Tesla dealerships, angry comments at local electeds' town halls, and now Bernie and AOC's big rally in Civic Center this Friday, local liberals have all kinds of options for pushing back against Trump. So today we're talking through the new look of the resistance with one of its leaders. Plus, is Denver ready for one fair wage? And our special guest gives us some insight into some recent intrigue on City Council. Today is Tuesday, March 18th. I'm Paul Caroli, and here's what Denver's talking about. Good morning, everyone. Bree is out, but I have a great guest joining me here today on today's Tuesday News Roundup. We're going to talk about a lot of big issues facing the city. She is a progressive leader on City Council, where she holds one of the at-large seats, one of the two. Welcome back to the show, Sarah Parody.
Thank you so much. I love it here.
So, Sarah, we were just talking off mic about a transit tour you went on Federal, and you have some news to share right off the bat.
Yeah, this was a bummer, actually. I got on the bus with Jill Locantor from the Streets Partnership and some kind of transit activist friends and folks because we wanted to check out how Federal's looking for BRT and, you know, they wanted to talk me through the plans as far as like, when's it going to be side running? When's it going to be center running?
They've been bus rapid transit project we've been looking forward to. Colfax is the current one, but the next one is Federal. We've been looking forward to that.
Yeah. We've been, I mean, it's sort of the future of transit in the city, right? So anyway, we were all down in the weeds, just getting ready to advocate for what needs to be happening there. And then suddenly, later that evening, apparently the folks who've been meeting with CDOT about it, the Colorado Department of Transit, who's in charge of Federal, got an email saying that they're postponing their planning group for the foreseeable future because federal grant funds are paused. And that's what they were counting on to be able to do that project.
What a setback.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
I mean, it's part of the same story we've been talking about a lot, the whole Doge, Elon Musk situation, but didn't think it was going to come to federal BRT.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a local elected. I'll say that because, you know, local's where it's at right now.
Well, that's what I want to talk to you about, actually. First off the bat, there's this big conflict happening within the Democratic Party. I know you ran unaffiliated. That's how our local elections work, but you're a progressive leader. People know you that way. And we have the news late last week that Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are coming to Denver this Friday afternoon for a big rally. I think it's going to be big in Civic Center Park. Are you going to be there?
I'm hoping to. Depends on when we get out of our city council budget planning session. But yes, otherwise me and my daughter will be there with bells on.
Have you got an invite to speak?
No, I'm just a little city council lady.
What do you think they should, what should they talk about to Denverites? What do you think Denverites would want to hear from them?
Well, it relates to this wage bill, actually, that we're, I think, going to chat about a little bit, which is just that, like, you know, we know what's wrong with our economy, right? And what's wrong with our economy is that it's extractive. And we just all sort of tithe upwards and the rich get richer. And that's starting to show in a bigger way. Like, I think we're really starting to break. And I think that's the root cause. So, you know, the oligarchy tour is well named as far as I'm concerned. Right.
The quote unquote fighting oligarchy tour that they're doing. I think they're going to be in Greeley earlier Friday. And then they're coming to Denver like Friday. I had to say, it looked like happy hour time to me. I think the rally's supposed to start at 4, but I'm predicting a big party in Civic Center Park.
Yeah, hopefully the weather will hold.
Oh my God, yeah. Hope it doesn't snow. I know a lot of people who are excited about it. I'm sure we'll be there. We'll be covering it.
Good. Yeah. Please do.
We're talking about the federal government. We're talking about our elected officials, what we can expect out of them. I think this has been kind of a hot topic lately because Colorado's congressional delegation has been divided. In Washington, just at the end of last week, there was this big fight that divided Democrats. It was really quite hostile at times. I want to ask you about this because it's relevant to everybody on the left who wants to resist our new president, Trump. The news was Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper voted no on this big Republican budget bill, which then Minority Leader Chuck Schumer caved and allowed it to pass. But I think the big question is what I want to talk to you about is like, how do you feel like our congressional delegation from Colorado is faring? And is there anything you'd like to see more or less of from them?
Yeah, I mean, this was a move in the right direction. I was upset, although I understand where it's coming from, that our senators voted through a lot of Trump cabinet nominees who we know what their plans were. We knew what they were going to do to those agencies and what that would in turn do to Colorado.
Yeah, I think Hick in particular had a particularly strong record of supporting the nominees.
Yeah, and they both are the kind of people who prefer to kind of be collaborative, and that, that's like who they are as individuals. And I get that. Like I'm also built that way, but you can't collaborate with fascism, right? Like that word suddenly has a very different meaning at that point. So
is that how you see it?
We're moving in that direction. Like, this is an administration that is nothing but destructive, and it's trying to break our most fundamental institutions. And so we can't be in that cooperative kind of mindset. Like there's nothing to cooperate with there, especially when it comes to Denver. Like there's memos from the Department of Justice talking about how much they want to focus on and come after Denver because we like immigrants here.
Another piece of news on this same topic, the Associated Press reported on Friday that Trump's Federal Emergency Management Agency, aka FEMA, has threatened to withhold $32 million in grants over Denver's immigration policies. That's money that would have been coming, maybe is still coming to Denver, but because of the way that our leaders, yourself, our mayor, have handled immigration, they're now saying we're not going to get that money. Is that real leverage? Like, what does that mean for you in council in the day-to-day?
Yeah, that question goes to like the heart of what's keeping me up at night. So I think it's less than 32 million because some of it's been dispersed, but I think there's like 20 million left that we haven't gotten. I've been trawling through all of our grant reports from last year and like figuring out, which things are most vulnerable right now, what's in the bank, what's not, talking to our Department of Finance about that. I think they're giving us a more full-throated briefing in the next week or two about that, like accounting. Denver's not heavily directly federally funded, right? Like we're a city. We get a lot of grants, but they're often for pretty specific things like, a new fentanyl testing machine for the police or something like this. Mm-hmm. That FEMA grant is one of the larger outstanding items, as I understand it, and of course is directly tied to reimbursing us for the fact that we rented a bunch of hotels to shelter people so that we wouldn't have 2-year-olds in diapers in the middle of the winter on the street in Denver. Like that's what we were actually looking at. So that was clearly the right thing to do. And now that we are in another budget year and the funding has still not yet come, we'll have to kind of figure out how to fill that gap. But that's not a small gap for us. Our entire city budget is like $1.6 billion if you take out the airport.
Well, I think what a lot of people are probably curious about is that going to change the way you think about how Denver does immigration right now? No.
I mean, this is the kind of thing. So if you zoom back and like think about how people in power with this particular mentality behave, any leverage they have, they're going to use it against you over and over and over. And so if you give in the first time they use the leverage, then they say, aha, Denver's going to give in. And then suddenly they're asking us to go after our trans community in some kind of way. They're asking us to, they'll just use their leverage against us over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. It's a really classic way that authoritarians operate. We can't protect ourselves from this, and so we just have to figure out how to operate around it and keep doing what we need to do for our city. Morally and ethically, like I'm not about to sort of throw open the doors to the deportation machine. Like that's not who we are here.
I wonder though, because I was following this fight within the Democrats nationally, and I listened to, just to bring it back to Chuck Schumer, I listened to an interview he did with the New York Times on Saturday after he ended up voting yes for this budget bill. I thought his argument was like pretty compelling, to be honest. Like I had mostly heard the folks that were angry and more like, vote no at all costs like Hick and Bennett did, but he was like, if we had filibustered and allowed the government to shut down, which is what Trump and Elon Musk wanted, then they would have been in a position to reopen any agency or not that they wanted on this emergency basis. So it would essentially, he said, have given them more control, which I thought was kind of scary because that's like the assumption is like they are full on authoritarian, like not interested in checks and balances or allowing the legislative branch to have the power of the purse at all. Like, do you think we're that close to, to the whole system breaking down right now?
I mean, what I would say is that these things historically happen in a very predictable, repeatable way. Like when governments fall apart, we're along that path. like it's a known path and we are definitely stepping down it. So now I do think like American institutions are really durable. Federalism is a part of that. Just the size and kind of clamorousness and diversity of the country is a part of that. The fact that we all have these really deep-seated identities that, like, yes, we do get to speak in public and we do get to participate in our politics is a part of that. So I'm not like counting us out, but it is definitely a 3-alarm fire.
Boy. One last thing on this before we move on is some people are resisting in other ways. Some people are doing things that I would say maybe are a little more extreme, although I think in some circles are quite popular, like these reports of arson and vandalism at the Tesla dealerships. There was one in Loveland. I guess someone has just been arrested for firebombing a Tesla dealership. What do you think about that kind of resistance now?
I think if you have time to firebomb a Tesla station, maybe instead like throw a potluck at the homeless shelter. Like there's ways to be very concrete in your resistance that are creative rather than destructive.
This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Not sure if you need urgent care or the emergency room? Denver Health has you covered. For non-life-threatening issues like minor injuries, abdominal pain, and even stitches and x-rays, Denver Health's urgent care is your go-to choice. Just walk right in. No appointment needed. With 4 convenient options, including adult care, pediatric care, virtual visits, and a downtown location at 16th in California, Denver Health makes it easy to get the care you need when you need it. But remember, if you're facing a serious life-threatening condition, head to the emergency room right away. Like seriously, like right now. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you need emergency medical help, you have my permission to hit pause and call an ambulance. Urgent care is here for those unexpected issues that need quick attention but aren't emergencies. Plus, Denver Health accepts most insurance plans. Please turn off this podcast right now, call 911, and then go to the emergency room. When you're sick, think Denver Health Urgent Care. Most major insurances accepted.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Are you holding back on foreign travel plans this year because you're afraid of the language gap? I'm not, because I have Babbel. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I'm learning Spanish on Babbel, getting ready for a trip to Mexico City. Babbel is the language learning app that gets you talking. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or at whatever pace you choose. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. Babbel has given me great lessons on getting directions, ordering in a restaurant, and making plans. And of all the things I'm doing in Mexico City, I'm probably most excited about the soccer game we're going to. So I was excited to learn how to cheer from Babbel. That'll be me you'll hear yelling, "Fuerza Tigres! Fuerza Tigres!" With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee. Let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting our listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
All right, let's move on to the issue that we've been emailing back and forth a little bit about, this tip minimum wage proposal at the state. There were some restaurants that were talking about a crisis in their industry, restaurants closing, and then they proposed to have the state lower our tipped minimum wage, which basically would mean the restaurants wouldn't have to pay their servers as much on their base pay and allow more of the money coming into the restaurant to be for them to do whatever they want with it, pay other people, pocket it, whatever. I know you've been following this just as closely as I have, and we have on the podcast. There's been some news on this. On Friday, the House Finance Committee passed a newly amended version of this that basically kicks control, as we predicted on the show, kicks control of the tip minimum wage back to the local governments, which is you, not you personally, but you, city council, the mayor, et cetera. But you personally, actually, have been a huge opponent of this. So what do you make of the latest?
So first of all, this was a big win for labor and for local governments that have chosen to increase minimum wage due to cost of living in our jurisdictions. We there was a coalition of folks fighting really, really hard for an outcome other than a wage cut. And so this is not a wage cut. That's a great thing. It was a big win, I'll put it that way. However, what they've given to Denver and other jurisdictions is actually only the ability to cut pay by increasing the tip credit. We can't decrease the tip credit. We can't sort of work around it in other ways. So that wasn't the full local control that we were looking for. And it's definitely intended to set things up politically where they're going to say, oh, we gave Denver the ability to cut pay and they didn't do it. So now we have no choice but to cut pay, right? So I can see that coming a mile away. When they passed the original bill allowing localities to increase minimum wage, which makes sense because cost of living is really different at different places, right? Like that's clearly the kind of thing that should be a local issue. There was a proviso in there that required those local governments, including Denver, to analyze, to do all this stakeholding and analysis of the local economy. They sort of prescribed this really intensive process, which ironically looked nothing like the process that went into this state bill. And they did not include that prescription in this portion, in this new amendment. So I would love it if the state legislature would perhaps add that on in the Senate, give us the direction to study and actually look at the economics of everything. We should do that either way, and we will do that either way. So I will certainly dig into this issue, but I will tell you that the ultimate end state that is just known across the country by all kinds of data and analysis to be better for restaurants and better for workers is to eventually get rid of tipping or get rid of tip credits, get rid of the expectation of tipping and get to one fair wage.
One fair wage, yes. I thought
that's
where we were going to go to. Yeah, I mean, that's this nationwide campaign that they would want to eliminate the tip credit, aka the tipped minimum wage, and just make one minimum wage that you can make tips on top of, but it's one wage.
Right. So think about tipping. I mean, basically what's happening here is the way we've set up tip credits and then therefore the expectation for people to tip is that your customer is directly paying the worker a little bit of their pay instead of just paying it all to you as the business who then passes on the wage portion to the worker. And that creates all kinds of just problems. For one thing, it creates problems where I can't tell you when I was a practicing, wage and employment attorney, how many female tipped workers, usually female, were in my office talking about how they basically had to tolerate massive amounts of sexual harassment from regulars because otherwise their tips would fall. And then if, because of tip pooling, then all the other workers are mad at them and, the boss is mad at them because maybe they are not getting the full extent of their tip credit, right?
Right. I've heard things like the lighter your skin, the higher your tips.
Yeah, it's so gross. It's
really...
the
whole institution has
nefarious.
Some rotten bits at the core of it.
Yes. So anyway, but here's the thing about it. It's not just for workers. It's really hard to administer if you're an employer. It's a lot trickier just to do this kind of payroll and to do the accounting of tips.
Yeah, so enforcement is difficult. I've thought about the proposals. There's this one that was on Friday that got voted down in the finance committee, but I don't know if you looked, I forwarded you, it was so complicated.
Yeah.
I was like, this is basically a subsidy for the credit card companies because it is forcing these operators, these restaurants to switch to credit cards if they're cash only. They have to use credit cards and computers. It would just not be an option to try to figure out all these complicated rules.
That was no kind of solution. I'm so glad that it didn't pass. The amendment that we got was probably, the best thing we could have gotten here, but is also not a real solution. A real solution would be letting local governments do the entire bundle of policy in this area, not just have the option of only increasing the tip credit. There's a lot of things that we could control about the Denver economy if we weren't restrained from doing so by the state. So we can't do anything to stabilize or, cool down rent increases for residential or commercial rents. So we don't have the ability, for example, to say, hey, if you, landlord, have a small restaurant on your property, we're not going to let you increase their rent more than 5% year over year. We can't do that. State has tied our hands. And here's the real kicker about the inflationary increases to minimum wage. The more rent increases, rent is the main component of inflation. And so our minimum wage increases based on CPI right now. So if we could control
Consumer
rents...
Price Index, it's inflation.
Thank you for fixing my acronym. Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Exactly. I mean, you're here for a lot of reasons, but that's a good one. So the Consumer Price Index is very heavily determined by rent. And so if we could cool down rents in Denver as a local government, literally minimum wages wouldn't rise as fast. There's so much that we could be doing for small business and their workers that would be mutually beneficial to everyone and create virtuous economic cycles.
Well, not everyone. I mean,
Not corporate landlords that don't even live here, and I'm not worried about them.
I mean, it's not just corporate landlords. You're also talking about the restaurant industry. I mean, it sounds like you're not buying the narrative that we're hearing from the restaurant owners that they're closing because these wages are too high, that labor costs are too high. Every year when the minimum wage goes up, we hear them screaming again. The mayor seems to agree with this. When he was on a couple of weeks ago, he was like, I get it. I see the problem.
Well, two things about that. And it's kind of subtle. One, it's actually not true that we've had a disproportionate wave of restaurant closures in Denver. The new
contested data, highly contested data.
But the new BLS data that came out last week, they were trying to get this bill through before the annual BLS data dropped, right? And instead rely on our excise and license data, which doesn't really measure restaurant openings and closures.
I don't actually agree with that. Scott Wasserman, who's been running the bill, he texted me the data. He was like, this helps me.
Who's been hired to run the bill for the Restaurant Association, as opposed to CCLP, which is an independent third-party analyzer, right? So what BLS showed is that, yes, restaurants have really slightly gone down in Denver at the exact same rate as the rest of Colorado. So the idea that this is because of minimum wage, we're the only ones other than Boulder and Edgewater that have set a higher minimum wage, right? Mm-hmm. So how is that the causal factor? So yeah, the data is complicated. What I was going to say though is I don't disagree with restaurant owners saying that they're really stretched. Like that's a fact. I think if any of them showed me their balance sheet, and a few of them have, there's a lot of inputs into that, including rent, including supply chain, cost of food, all those things. So it's the larger economy. Like we're feeling this huge extractive pressure from the tippy top across the board. And so when I say helping everyone, I just said I would love to stabilize commercial rents. That would directly help restaurants.
You feel like that's the thing.
That's one thing.
Rent control, aka rent control, rent stabilization.
It's one thing. Yeah. It's one thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think would potentially be supportive to restaurants that I think we should be looking at all together as a package. And city council can't do that in like a 2-week period while some state bill is running that we were never told about until the day it dropped. So we do things more gradually than that, and we will definitely be paying attention to this and have been. But I think it's fair to say that we're going to need to like focus on it and think about what we do have available to us without rent stabilization and with only the ability to cut wages in terms of tips.
Well, I have to say before we move on, I want to hit a couple other topics here that the research on rent stabilization, I mean, we could talk about that maybe on another show, but highly contested. I think most economists would say that that's not a way to help most people.
Not over the long term, but it can be. This is why I like to say rent stabilization. When you're in a kind of like a economic crisis, like I think we're heading into right now, it can be a tool to stabilize things. And that's one of the most important things we need in this kind of like chaotic economy.
I think it's a way to help talking about specific research. People in specific buildings where the caps would be implemented. Over the course of the whole market, it's going to hurt more people. It's going to mean higher rents. I don't think that that's necessarily true depending on how you structure it. And keep in mind, what we're talking about right now is actually like commercial restaurant rents, right? And then in addition to that, in Denver, rent increases have been so runaway high. If you believe in kind of trickle-down economics, then you don't want rent stabilization because you think, oh, the corporate landlords are somehow benefiting the entire economy. I don't think that that's true. And I think there's studies on both sides of that rent stabilization debate nationwide. But what's been studied is mostly things that are rent stabilizations like you have in New York that are pretty aggressive and are very like permanent and longstanding, right? And so we could do things in the short term in Denver to cool off the rental market that I think we should do if we had the tools to do that, and that would benefit everyone, including commercial renters like small restaurants.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen Report.
This episode is brought to you by the Nissan Armada Pro 4X. With a twin-turbo V6 engine ready to propel your adventures up to 8,500 pounds of towing capacity to haul all your favorite toys and space for 8 passengers, Nissan's most powerful car yet will chew up and spit out anything you throw at it. Learn more about the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada at nissanusa.com. Towing capacity varies by configuration. See Nissan Towing Guide and Owner's Manual for additional information. Always secure cargo.
couple of quick topics here before we have a listener comment. Pena Boulevard. I know a lot of listeners care about this. This is an issue that came up recently on City Council, and it was very surprising to me because for years, everyone I talked to, the powers that be, were all like, "It's inevitable. We must widen Pena Boulevard. This is the highway to the airport. There's traffic all the time. The A line was not built in a way to accommodate more frequent trains, and people aren't using it the way that we hoped anyway. So the answer to the airport traffic problem is widening Pena Boulevard." But you all on council just postponed a vote. So is the momentum shifting away from widening the highway?
Well, I am only one part of any momentum that may exist. So the existence of momentum, I don't know. I will say that we've heard from a massive number of constituents about this. And they're completely right. Like highway widening has always been treated as inevitable. And when you add one lane, you end up adding more lanes. Like we all know the studies
Induced
about that.
demand.
Yeah, and that does apply out by the airport. The neighborhoods out there are growing. So the airport used to say that it wouldn't sort of apply in that part of the city because that part of the city wasn't growing, and it is. It's absolutely growing. So yeah, induced demand. And we built a train right along the airport because of cost problems at the time. We didn't double track it. We didn't make the platforms long enough for that, right? It's true that it would be really, really expensive to add capacity in that way, like adding track or adding platforms. It's also true that we have the ability to go to the voters sometimes and vote for taxes for particular kinds of things. But in addition to that, you just said people aren't using the A line in the way that we hoped. Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting. At peak times, the A train is pretty full. It's not full all the time. Okay, so if people aren't using the A line, why is that? Is it because it costs $10 if you live in GVR and you work at the airport, so you're going to drive just that last little bit? Is it because we don't have feeder buses into the stations that will get people to the A line? Is it because people don't feel safe parking at the park and ride? Guess how we could learn all of that? Through a NEPA study, which is what we're doing, but we're not studying any of the components related to the A line. So we should be studying all of these things side by side, keeping our minds open, and then making a decision.
Okay, so is that what the debate was? Then NEPA, that's like an environmental review. That's the next step towards widening the highway would be an environmental review of whatever plan is in place, or maybe they're going to design a plan and then they're going to evaluate it. But you're saying you want to have a broader evaluation of the whole picture?
Well, and what's funny is it's not me saying it. NEPA is actually, it's called an alternatives analysis. You're supposed to analyze not only the thing that you're considering, but all the viable alternatives. And so that's actually the entire point of that federal law, the National Environmental Protection Act. And so leaving out the A line, I think is, I don't know whether that's enough of a problem with the NEPA analysis that I might be concerned about a lawsuit. Even if not, it's certainly against the spirit of the thing. Like you're supposed to, the whole point of it is to force an open mind to make you evaluate alternatives. And what I said in committee last Thursday is like, look, I'm a policymaker. I don't control the RTD budget and I don't control RTD. But I do want to know how much it would actually cost to double track the A line and then what other alternatives might be available and might work. I want that study in my hand so that I can influence that decision. That's the point of the statute.
All right. Another issue, hot topic on council, speaking of growth at the airport, is the Park Hill Golf Course. Last month, the mayor announced and celebrated this deal where he had done a land swap with the former owners, or still technically current owners of the Park Hill Golf Course for some land out by the airport. But that deal that they announced needed to be approved by City Council, and that approval was just postponed for, quote, undisclosed reasons, according to the reporting. What are those reasons?
I have to be careful about this because I don't know what's public and what's not, but it's not council resistance. I'll just put it that way. It's not like we have a concern. It's more of a technical hangup. Okay.
There's no concern, or there's no real pushback happening right now on this deal?
If it comes in front of me, I'll be a yes on it, and I hope it does soon.
Okay. Well, we'll be watching that. As we do every Tuesday, we're going to end the show with my favorite thing about this whole podcast, listening to you, our brilliant and hilarious listeners. This time we have a voicemail in response to a topic we've been talking about last week. Our CEO, David Plotz, was on the pod last week. I talked to him and he was like, Denver's got a problem.
Hi, Bree. Hi, Paul. Hi, David Plotz. This is Fiona from Centennial, and I have a very clear insight on why Denver has a disgusting, atrocious, desiccated dog poop problem. I think the reality is it is so dry and sunny here that the dog poop that doesn't get picked up never washes away. It just bakes in the sun to become rock hard, completely mummified, desiccated dog poop rocks that then cannot go away. So in other places, it rains on the dog poop, it sort of slowly erodes away, and that just does not happen here. We just have persistent poop, persistent, desiccated, disgusting dog poop. Dog owners, this doesn't happen if you pick up your poop. Pick up your poop. I don't want to pick up your dog's poop. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much for calling in, Fiona. Sarah, the dog poop problem. Do we have one?
Well, all I know is my daughter, she's 7, she's gotten really into gardening, and she learned that the fertilizer she was putting on her little plants religiously every day in her little windowsill, it's really cute, had poop in it.
Really?
And she started absolutely freaking out. I was like, oh, I don't know.
That's adorable.
Yeah, so I don't know. Apparently she doesn't notice the poop outside because she'd never leave again. That's all I got.
Have you not noticed it? Have you not noticed? Do you not think you're not stepping in it? Like, are you not seeing it? We got so many voicemails about this. I got to say, when we put the call out, I did not expect this. It was like when we had the landlord lobbyist on the show. People had so much to say.
You're onto something here with this dog poop thing.
I think
don't
it's
know,
real.
man. I've lived in the West my whole life, so maybe I'm just used to that. Maybe I just am from desiccated dog poop world, and I don't know that it's not normal.
Maybe.
I don't know.
The one thing I thought that was kind of related to stuff that you all have done on city council, like a couple of years ago, I know we banned the use of plastic bags in grocery stores. And people prefer, I think, I'm not a dog person.
As pooper picker-uppers.
Yes, exactly. So maybe people are picking up their poop less. I can't believe I got that out. That was so many P's. maybe people are picking up their poop less because they don't have these plastic bags. Do we need to bring back the plastic bags? Yes, bad for the environment, but
good for getting poop off the sidewalk.
Good for our
I'm
poop
going to
problem.
ask my neighbor who fills he has one of those little things on his pole outside his house where he fills it with bags. But I know when I had kids, I just bought rolls of specific dog poop bags on Amazon, which are not banned. And I use those for particularly horrible diapers and things like that. So maybe I'll see if I have any left and I'll just put them out there to make sure people are pooper picker-upping.
All right, we're gonna find those. We're gonna find that link and we're gonna put it in the show notes so other people
You
can
talk
do the
about
same.
poop and everyone just goes to parenting stories.
Hey, these are funny. Your daughter getting into gardening is very adorable.
Yeah.
It's the time of year for it.
Yeah.
What are her plans?
Well, so she thinks we're all idiots for planting things outside, actually, because she's then it dies in the winter. So she's an indoor gardener so far. And she's very, very critical of my practice of putting vegetables outdoors. So her little windowsill right now has a pea plant that has grown 3 peas so far. Every time it grows a pea, we have to have a pea ceremony and then eat the pea.
Wow.
So it's a lot.
That's fun.
It's pretty great.
All right. Well, listeners, I know that you have opinions about dog poop, and I want to hear them. What is Denver's dog poop problem? Why do we have this? Is it real? Maybe we don't have one. Maybe you think differently. Call in 720-500-5418. Sarah Parody, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell Bernie and AOC about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you then.
That was like a poem.
Desiccated, disgusted.
Perpetual problem of poop.